والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We continue in the chapter of Istighatha. What we said in the chapter, if one would look inside the title of it, it says, من الشرك يستغيث بغير الله ويدعو غيره. That from polytheism is to perform istighatha, or direct the type of ibadah which is called istighatha. Is to direct the type of worship which is called istighatha to other than Allah. So that is a form of polytheism, as we said. A form of polytheism is to direct that type of worship which is called istighatha to other than Allah. Notice that the mu'allif, or the author that he mentioned, has said that it's from polytheism is to seek that ghawth or istighatha with other than Allah, or to invoke other than Him. So we mentioned and said that istighatha is a type of dua. It's a type of supplication which is specific. And we said that the meaning, more or less, of istighatha is izalat al-shidda, or dua al-makrub, حيث يطلب من الله تبارك وتعالى يفرج عنه الكربات. The meaning of al-istighatha is when one is in a state of dire need, or is in a state of anguishment. What they call dua al-makrub is dua of a one who's facing something trivial, where he's facing something of anguishment. And as a result of it, more than likely, in certain situations, he's about to lose his life, or about to die. Or something trivial as, for example, when one is in a car, and perhaps, that he's about to have a head-on collision, that he's about to have a head-on collision. So once he sees that's about to happen, this is a type of state in which he will call on his Lord. Maybe perhaps in order to take this type of hardship or stress away from him. So it's a time where a person is in a state where, like we said, he's distressed, a state of anguishment, a state in where an affair is very trivial, where it comes as a result of it, like we said, death maybe, or in a state in which he feels that as if his life, he's about to lose it. And he calls on his Lord to remove the severity of what he's in, or those severe circumstances that he's facing. So all those are meanings of istighatha. So it's just to remove an affair that is trivial and an affair of very, very severe stress and hardship. So istighatha is a type of dua where you want stress or type of anguishment to be removed. So that's the meaning of what? Istighatha. So istighatha, like we said, is a type of supplication. Then the mu'allif that he said, أو يدعو غيره, that he invokes or calls on other than him. So notice that the mu'allif, or the author, rahimahullah, that he put two affairs in one category, or one title, He put two affairs and gathered between two matters in one title. So he talked about istighatha, and he talked about dua. So istighatha, like we said, is a type of dua. And dua, as we know, I think that everyone should know what dua is. A supplication or an invocation, as we know, is general. As we know, it could be a time of what? A time of anguishment, and it could be a time of relief. So dua, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, is general. Whereas istighatha, as we talked about last lesson, is specific. Like we said before in the last class, that this is from the most greatest of abwab, or the greatest of chapters that is in this book. Why? Because the majority of the Muslims that you'll find around the world have fell into polytheism in regards to this affair of istighatha. Even though they say that it's directed towards people who are righteous. And just because it's directed to people who are righteous does not remove it from the fact that it's polytheism. Even though who you calling on might be Muslim, and very likely, rather, in certain instances, they are righteous people. And in some instances, that is not the case. For regards to what we said about dua, of course, everyone knows about supplication, of what they learned probably in Al-Qawaid Al-Arba' and also likewise in Usul Al-Thalatha. But notice the author, he also put this inside of this chapter, which is istighatha. As we know, dua, you'll find, as Ahl Ilm mentioned, I'm sure everyone has learned this in Usul Al-Thalatha, it is worship. Dua huwa al-ibadah. What does it mean? It is worship, meaning that's the only type of worship, which is dua. No, to show that that is the, if you want to say, the essential quintessence or the head of all the worship goes back to dua. As dua, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, as we know, Allah wa ta'ala himself called it worship. And that it should be only directed to him. And if it's directed or given to other than him, then Allah wa ta'ala has threatened that he will put that person in the hellfire or in hell in humiliation. Allah wa ta'ala says in his book, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Allah wa ta'ala says in his book, and your Lord has said, call on me and I will answer you. Those who are arrogant from my worship. Notice Allah said, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Your Lord has said, call on me, I will answer you. So Allah wa ta'ala called dua now worship in the ayah, where he says, those who are arrogant from my worship. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called dua ibadah in this ayah, which is in Surah Al-Ghafir, ayah number 60. So Allah wa ta'ala says that dua is worship. He himself subhanahu wa ta'ala called supplication worship. As we know, dua, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, dua, as we know, breaks down into two categories. The first category, as we know, is what, everyone? Dua al-ibadah, the supplication which is worship itself. Supplication which is worship itself, as we know. Dua al-ibadah, dua al-ibadah, supplication. It's the first category of supplication, which is the supplication of worship. What does that mean, supplication of worship? Meaning worship itself. Of siyam, of performing hajj, of fasting, of salah, zakah, sadaqah. So dua al-ibadah is worship itself, as we know. Whereas that person, by the standing or performing that worship, what does that necessitate, everyone? One is trying to draw close to who? And he's seeking the pleasure of who? And he's also seeking refuge in the wrath, from the wrath of who? And the punishment of who? So that's the reason why we perform all these acts of worship. Why do we perform and stand to pray? Why do we perform it, and who do we perform it for? Also likewise, of what we perform, of every act of worship that you can think of. Whether it be, for example, of why we raise our pants above our ankles, or why we distinguish ourselves as Muslims from other people, or why we grow our beards. All of it is affairs that is connected to worship itself. Of why we try to draw close to Allah by earning His pleasure and His garden and His reward as a result of those who draw close to Him by these different affairs and different acts of worship. And also likewise at the same time hoping that Allah will forgive us and give us refuge from His punishment and His wrath as a result of those who disobey Him and oppose Him in these affairs. Likewise. So, dua al-ibadah, just to be concise, is all what, everyone? It is worship itself. That is dua al-ibadah. The second category, as we know, is called Du'a al-Mas'ala, as we know. Du'a al-Mas'ala. Du'a al-Mas'ala. Supplication of what? Asking Allah. When a person raises his hands and he asks Allah Ta'ala for some type of need, or relieve him of some type of stress, or some type of adversity that he's facing at that particular time, or anything trivial that might be taking place in his life. All these, when a person raises his hands and he asks Allah to have these type of matters removed, or seeking some type of benefit. Now, it's only, like we said, dua is in the state of adversity. It's also in the state of what, everyone? Relief and ease. Or making dua for your brother, or making dua for someone in your family. That is called Du'a al-Mas'ala. When you raise your hands and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لِجَلْبِ مَنْفَعَ وَدَفْعِ مَضَرَّةٍ, to order to attain some type of benefit or remove some type of harm. So that's the second category. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah said about Du'a al-Ibadah, he said Du'a, the first category, necessitates the second one. He said, Du'a ibadah mustalzimun li-du'a al-mas'ala. The first category necessitates the second one. And all of the second category contains the first. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? Every person that performs an act of worship, for example, when you stand to pray, what in actuality are you asking? What by your lisan al-hal, as they say, bilisan al-hal, meaning within yourself, what are you truly doing when you perform an act of worship? For example, salah, except that it necessitates what? Du'a al-mas'ala. What do they mean by that? It necessitates du'a al-mas'ala, meaning by your lisan al-hal, by you performing that worship, you are asking Allah for something, even though you're not saying it verbally with your tongue. But by the action, you're seeking something. You're seeking out something, and you also want refuge from something. That's the only reason why all of us perform these acts of worship. We're seeking the face of Allah, earning His pleasure. First of all, number one, you're carrying out for the purpose of why you created in the first place. The purpose of your creation in the first place. That's number one. So you're fulfilling that need, and also that desire, and that question that's in your mind. What's the purpose of why I'm doing this, or what am I here for in the first place? That's number one. Number two, when you perform a salah right now, like we said, when you perform that aspect of worship, whether it's salah or sadaqah or what have you, it's as if you're saying, not verbally with the tongue, but by the state or the current state of you performing that worship, I'm seeking something and I'm asking something. And at the same time, I'm seeking refuge from something, and I'm asking for protection of something, even though it's not verbal. But when you perform salah or pay zakah, why are you doing it? It's as if, like we said, that worship is almost as if it's speaking for itself. It's saying, oh Allah, I'm asking you for reward, and I'm asking to earn your love, and I seek refuge in your anger, and I'm asking you to get protection from the hellfire. That's the reason why we do all these affairs of worship, what we're supposed to be doing for it in the first place. But that's as if that's what we're saying by the state or the current state of why we're performing that ibadah. So that's the reason why we say that du'a al-ibadah necessitates what? The first category necessitates what? The second. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? For now, now the opposite will switch it. When a person raises his hands in dua, that's dua al-mas'ala. And he's asking Allah, of course. We said it contains dua al-ibadah. I think that's even more clear than the first one. It contains dua al-ibadah. It contains it. When you raise your hands and asking Allah, what you're doing at the same time, without a shadow of a doubt, at the same time you're doing an affair of what? Of ibadah, which is the head of ibadat, the head of all worship. which is what? Supplication itself, which is of raising the hands. As we know, dua, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, dua in the Arabic language, as we know, dua can mean calling on. We know the origin of dua. I'm going to go get to that too, into that, not right now. As we know, dua, based upon the two categories that we gave everyone, that's dua al-ibadah, dua al-mas'ala. The affairs of worship, of invocation, whether it be of the worship itself or asking, or raising their hands. We know there's another meaning of dua, linguistically, in the Arabic language. Dua, linguistically. Also, we know another linguistic meaning of a dua can mean invite. Invite. It means to invite over someone your house. For example, هل أنت مدعو إلى بيتي? Are you invited to my house? هل أنت مدعو? مدعو. Or for example, أنا دعوتك إلى حضور وليمتي. I invited you to attend my walima. Notice how I use the word dua. دعوته. دعوته إلى وليمتي إلى حضور وليمتي. Which is not true. So, my wife hear that and be like, you having a walima I don't know about. But anyway, it's just an example. أنا دعوتك إلى حضور وليمتي. I invited you to my what? To my walima. Notice I use the verb what, everyone? Da'autu. Da'autu. Dua. And that's how linguistically you would say it in the Arabic language. Da'autuhu ila bayti, or da'autuhu ila walimati, or huduri walimati, or ila haflati, to my party, or what have you. Notice I use the word dua. In that aspect, we know in regards to what is tied into the creation, that type of dua is permissible because it's not ibadah. It's just merely invitation, which we know is what? Is permissible. And in those affairs in regards to inviting someone, then we know if one is able, then he should what? Rather, you'll find in certain instances, it's obligatory to answer the invitation of your brother. No. And the only time that one is pardoned is as if something, like we said, very detrimental, where he has to excuse himself. But the origin of an invitation, is obligatory to answer it. No. A lot of people don't think it's all, it's just highly recommended. No. If your brother has called you and invited you, you'll find that there's another narration we'll bring, inshallah. He says, one narration says, Man da'akum fa'ajibu. Whoever invites you, answer his invitation. That's an obligation. That's a command form. Fa'ajibu. Answer his invitation. وَمَنْ دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ. Whoever invites you, answer it. There's another narration where it says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَجِبْ وَمَنْ لَمْ يُجِبِ الدَّعْوَ فَقَدْ عَصَى أَبَا الْقَاسِمِ. There's one narration that says, whoever doesn't answer the invitation has disobeyed Abu al-Qasim. These are narrations to show that what, everyone? If someone's to invite you, of course it's to something that is lawful, of course. It can't be a party of music and alcohol and all these other things. But we're talking about a halal type of what? Type of gathering, with all the boundaries of Allah are being upheld. And if one was to call or invite you, then if you do not have a justifiable excuse then to pardon yourself from answering the invitation, then one has to come. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? But the point why we mention that, ya ma'ashal ikhwas, to show that the word dua in certain contexts does not necessarily mean what? Ibadah. That linguistically also dua can mean to invite. Is it clear what I'm saying? So now in regards to istighatha, istighatha, like we talked about and said, it is a type of what? It's a type of supplication. It's a type. So we also mentioned, said last class, every istighatha is what? Every istighatha. We're talking about worship right now. Every istighatha is dua, but not every dua is istighatha. Not every dua is istighatha. For istighatha, is akhas, wa dua is a'am. So dua is more specific, and istighatha is more specific. I'm sorry. Istighatha is more specific, and dua is a'am, is more general. Shaykh al-Islam have mentioned in regards to this and what we're discussing now, about dua and things of that matter, what we're discussing. It is Ar-Risala As-Sunniyah. He says, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, if from those, during his time, alayhi salatu wasalam, from those who ascribed to Islam, from those who left out the fold of Islam. Now, there were certain people that left the fold of Islam during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, for the Murtaddeen. And they left off specific aspects, rather they left off worship of Allah, altogether. He says, if this was the case during his time, then let it be known that the one who ascribes to Islam and the Sunnah in these days and times also likewise can leave out from Islam. He can leave out the fold of Islam. Listen to what Shaykh al-Islam goes on to say, because what he's saying is very, very important. And he's tying it in with dua and istighatha altogether. He says, from those reasons why people leave the fold of Islam, this is what he goes on to say. He's talking about the Muslims. He said, al-ghulu fi ba'd al-mashayikh. He's talking about mashayikh al-turuq al-sufiyah. He says, going to the extremes and magnifying or venerating those so-called mashayikh al-turuq al-sufiyah, the ways of those who practice mysticism, for lack of better words. He says, are those who go to the extremes and they mashayikh from the mashayikh al-turuq al-sufiyah. And they raise them above their level to the point they give them the rights of Allah to their mashayikh. They give the rights of Allah to their so-called mashayikh. Bowing down to them, making sujood to them, and even making dua to them. Of what takes place was more than likely even tomorrow. Which will be tomorrow, which is tomorrow, inshallah, will be what? Yawm Arafah. Where you'll find that Muslims come on Yawm Arafah and they stand in the time of Arafah on the hill, making dua to the so-called sheikh who's in another country, and asking them for barakah, and asking them to relieve them of some type of stress, or allowing their wife to get them pregnant, or giving them tawfiq to allow their wife to get pregnant with certain children. All these things that you will ask Allah, which Allah ta'ala can only do, is what they will ask their so-called mystic mashayikh, in which this type of polytheism takes place on, which will be tomorrow, which is the 8th, which is the 9th, which is then tonight would be the 8th. Tomorrow will be the Yawm Arafah, right everyone? No. So tomorrow will be Yawm Arafah, in which this type of polytheism takes place, in which people stand on Yawm Arafah asking their so-called sheikh, hear us, and we have arrived by your barakah, and answer our dua, for verily we have arrived by your safety and your security, and we hope that you will return us back safely and security to our families. For a person that makes this dua, they have no hajj. Hajj is nullified because of polytheism. So you got to imagine a person that was poor for all that time, saved and sacrificed probably some of the people who were in countries who probably ate bread, saving up little bit of money for years and years, all to come over to Mecca to commit major polytheism. Which their Islam is nullified. Not only is their Hajj nullified, their Islam nullified. Why? Because they lost the purpose of why Hajj was established for the first place. It was for the glorification and magnification of Allah. Because if one truly studied Hajj, from the beginning to the end, all of it is in Tawheed of Allah. From beginning to end. If you truly pondered on it and broke it down, all of it is for unifying and singling out Allah in worship. So he goes on to say, Shaykh al-Islam, that the glorification or the veneration to the point where they raise to their levels, raise above the level of what Allah had given them, if any, because a lot of them are ignorant, misleading them, and deceiving the people. Raising their so-called mashayikh above the level, giving them the rights of Allah. Notice what he goes on to say, Shaykh al-Islam. He says, going to the extremes of even as regards to Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's refuting who? The Rawafid and the Shia. And going to the extremes of Jesus, the son of Mary. Who's he refuting? The Christians. The Christians. going to the extremes, and in Jesus the Son of Mary, Al-Masih. He says, فَكُلُّ مَنْ غَلَى فِي نَبِيٍّ أَوْ رَجُلٍ صَالِحٍ وَجَعَلَ فِيهِ نَوْعًا مِنَ الْإِلَهِيَّةِ مثل أن يقول يا سيدي فلان انصرني أو أغثني أو ارزقني, to the end of it. He said, for every person that went to the extremes in a prophet or just a mere righteous man, he had made for him a type of huquq, of ilahiyah, those deitistic, if you want to say, of aspects of worship for other than Allah, similar to how they say, oh Sayyidi, oh my master, or the one who hears me, give me relief, give me aid, provide for me, give me sustenance, raising their hands like they would do with Allah. Verily I am in your safety, or I'm under your protection, or anything similar to that. Then this is the polytheism in which we're talking about right now. He said, whereas the person, generally speaking, that tawbah will be sought from him due to this erroneous act that he's committed. Rather, we notice this is the most hideous of all acts and the most ultimate of all oppression. Whereas, generally speaking, tawbah is sought from him, or except that one is killed due to the fact that he's done worse than what you can think of murder, stealing, homosexuality. The head of all those affairs, which supersedes, rather, is at the head of all of them is polytheism, which, like we said, is better for a person if he was to meet Allah Ta'ala upon all the different sins as far as it pertaining to disobedience, not shirk. It's better for him to meet Allah Ta'ala upon that than meet him upon shirk. We're relatively speaking. Rather, one doesn't want to meet Allah upon any major sin. But it's the fact that you met Allah and you might have killed 10 people or 20 people unjustly, that you meet Allah Ta'ala upon polytheism. For polytheism is the ultimate oppression. And this is what happens to a lot of Muslims these days, especially of those who involve themselves from the deviant sects of the Sufiya and the Shia. And they are connected. The Shia and the Sufiya are connected. They are connected. Rather, you'll find, like we said, every Sufi who's from the extremists, all have in them Rafid. All of them have in them Rafidiyya or Rafid, meaning they have the practice of the Rafidiyya from the Shia. Because the whole basis of worshiping graves came from the Shia and came from the Rawafid, in which the Sufi adopted from them. In which Shaykh al-Islam mentioned in Minhaj al-Sunnah, that he said that the grave worship was started by the Rawafid. Of course, he said initially it came before the Rawafid. It came before the Rawafid. It came from the people of the book, actually, if you go back in history. He said then the Shia adopted it, of worshiping the dead, or worshiping people who are dead, or righteous who are dead. He said then the Sufi adopted it from them. So the different types of practices, when they make dua to the dead, or make dua to their so-called mystic sheikh, or righteous sheikh, actually was a practice that was adopted from the Rawafid. Because they were the ones who started that evil sunnah of grave worshiping. Initially started from the Shia, and then the actual Sufiya took it from them. That's the reason why you'll find that they said the Sufiya has in them Rafid. They have in them practices of the Rawafid. So in this regard, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, that shirk being at the head of all affairs, then Shaykh al-Islam has said that verily Allah sent the messengers and he revealed the books in order that he be a worship alone, without any partners. To the end of what he said, rahimahullah. He said, for those who invoke with Allah, along with Allah, other deities, like Jesus, the Son of Mary, or the angels, or idols, rather you'll find that the shirk of them, of the polytheists during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, was not to believe that they solely, exclusively conduct in this existence alone. As we talked about last lesson, right everyone? We said that the shirk of the Quraysh during the time of the Prophet ﷺ is that they took those deities between them and Allah as just mere what? Mediators. That's it. No more, no less. The shirk of Quraysh, the shirk of the polytheists of Quraysh during the time of the Prophet ﷺ is that they never ultimately believed that those idols they were worshiping totally conduct in this existence alone. That they have some type of effect, that they can preordain, or they can affect or preordain evil happen in the world, or control lives of the people, of holding back certain evils or allowing certain good to touch certain people's lives. That wasn't the shirk of the Quraysh as we talked about last lesson. They only thought that their mediators, those idols, and those who they made shirk with, was mediators to draw them close to what? To Allah. That was the polytheism of what? Of the Quraysh. Whereas they only had shirk in the aspect of, as we talked about, of the ibadah. Not al-rububiyyah as we know, right? The shirk of the Muslims these days, especially going back to the Rawafid and the Shia and the Sufiya, from the extremists from them, have a shirk like we talked about in the lesson before. We said as a shirk or a polytheist or polytheistic type of belief that had actually surpassed the Quraysh, was something that we talked about in the last lesson that's unprecedented. And this is of people who say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Who are they? Starting from the Rawafid, especially in their belief that they are 12 imams, as they believe that they can conduct in this existence like Allah. That is the shirk that even the Quraysh fell into. And this is the belief of the Rawafid and some of the Sufiya, from the extremists of them, who believe that their so-called mashayikh, from them who are dead and from them who are alive, can conduct in this existence and can create and to know the knowledge of what takes place in the wombs of the woman, as Ali Jifri says. And if you read the refutation of Shaykh Salih Fawzan against Ali Jifri, he says in which Ali Jifri, the Al-Sufi Al-Ghali, that extremist from the Sufiya, in which he mentioned and said that the righteous can create in the arham, in the wombs of the woman, which is an actual ideology not even the Quraysh believed. The Quraysh didn't believe that their idols can, their mediators can create. Rather, they believe that Allah creates and Allah sustains. But however, now to the point where you have Muslims who say La ilaha illallah fell into a type of kufr not even the Quraysh fell into, which is something that is more aqbah wa ashna', more horrific and more erroneous and more horrific as far as in the aspect of worship. Whereas now you have fell into an aspect of shirk that's totally unprecedented. And that is the affair in which Shaykh al-Islam was refuting here. He said, for that which you'll find of what was the aqidah of something that's unprecedented, where you start to believe now that they can create تخلق الخلائق أو تنزل المطر أو تنبت النباتات. He said that this wasn't the aqidah of the mushrikeen of the Quraysh. None of them believed that their mediators could create, or that they can allow rain to come down, or allow vegetation or agriculture to be grown or come forth. None of them believed that. They was just believe that those people who are dead were just mediators and intercessors. That's it. In contrast to what? In contrast to the Muslims of you'll find of these days, especially the Rawafid, and especially those who are upon the ways of mysticism from the Turuq al-Sufiyya. And the Turuq al-Sufiyya of our days and times is Jama'at al-Tabligh. They are the Sufiyya al-Asriyya, as Shaykh al-Albani mentioned and said. He said about Jama'at al-Tabligh, he said Sufiyyatun Asriyya. He said they're the contemporary Sufis of our time. It's Jama'at al-Tabligh. He said they're the contemporary Sufis of our kind. Know for sure, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, the goal of Sufiyya is to take you to the level of what happened with Ibn Arabi. That's the whole goal. A lot of people don't know that. The goal of mysticism is to reach the level of Ibn Arabi, who is the head of Ahl al-Ilhad, of the belief that Allah is one, or Allah Ta'ala is everywhere, or that Allah is one with His creation and the creation is one with Allah. The head of all of them are to reach the goal like Ibn Arabi, which you find that he said in the disgusting statement where he said, Ar-Rabbu abdun, wal-abdu rabbun, wa layta shi'ri man al-mukallaf. He said that Allah, he said, Ar-Rabbu abdun, wal-abdu rabbun, wa layta shi'ri man al-mukallaf. He said that the Rabb is the Abd, and the Abd is the Rabb. He says, and I find it strange, who's the one that, if it's the case, how can he be burdened with any duties of Islam? They've been left off. So now, like we said, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, this is the ultimate goal of the Sufis. Exactly. That Ar-Rabb, I was thinking that the brothers and sisters already. That the slave is the Lord, and the Lord is the slave. How much so can they be burdened with any duties of Islam? You understand, everyone? The whole goal of them is to be like Ibn Arabi, not Ibn al-Arabi, Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi, who is, as Shaykh al-Islam mentioned, said, he's the Ra'is Wahdat al-Wujud. He's the head of those who call to the establishment of that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is one with the creation is one with Allah. He's the head of those who started that. And the Sufis want to be like him. Majority of, if not all of them, that's their ultimate goal, is to be like him, Ibn Arabi. In which he said, Shaykh al-Islam had mentioned about Ibn Arabi, he said about him that he reached in his book called Al-Fusus Al-Hikam, in his book called Al-Futuhat Al-Islamiyah, he said, which contains in it kufr, not even the kuffar al-Quraysh fell into. Not even the kuffar al-Quraysh, who the Prophet ﷺ was sent to take them out the level of darkness, of polytheism they were in. He said Ibn Arabi fell into kufriyat, not even the kuffar al-Quraysh even fell into. Mentioned some very filthy affairs in those books, which is in his book called Fusus. I think it's called Fusus Al-Hikam, Al-Fusus Al-Hikam, or something like that, Fusus. And he has another book called Futuhat Al-Islamiyah. In those books, in which contains kufriyat, like he said, not even the mushrikeen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ fell into. طيب, in regards to what we said, what did mention Sunnah al-Hanafi mention? The first ayah, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, if you go back to it, now if you go back to your books, I'm going to read what Sunnah al-Hanafi that he mentions says, and I'll mention that later. I'll read quickly what Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, and then we'll go inside the ayah. I'll read quickly what Ibn al-Qayyim that he says. Ibn al-Qayyim says, وَمِنْ أَنْوَاعِهِ يَعْنِي الشِّرْكِ طَلَبُ الْحَوَائِجِ مِنَ الْمَوْتَى والاستغاثة بهم والتوجه إليهم هذا أصل شرك العالم. He says from the type of polytheism is to ask for necessities or one's needs to be taken care of, meaning as far as in worship. We said that the foundation of worship is established upon two affairs, all of it. Ya ma'ashal ikhwa. What did we say? Worship is established upon two pillars. Number one is what? No, not ikhlas. That's the conditions of La ilaha illallah. All the affairs of worship goes around these two pillars, which is the most utmost of love with the most utmost of what? Servitude, subservience. The most utmost of love, meaning the love of worship with the most utmost of what? The most highest form of what? Servitude and subservience. Khudu'. Then you have tadallul. Ghayat al-hub ma'a ghayat al-dhul. The most utmost of love with the most utmost of what? Subservience. All aspects of worship dwell around these two affairs. Where Ibn al-Qayyim mentions in his poetry, he says, وَعِبَادَةُ الرَّحْمَنِ غَايَةُ حُبِّهِ مَعَ الذُّلِّ عَابِدِهِ هُمَا قُطُبَانِ وَعَلَيْهِمَا فَلَكَ الْعِبَادَةُ دَائِرٌ مَا دَارَ حَتَّى قَامَتِ الْقُطُبَانِ وَمَدَارُ الْأَمْرِ أَمْرُ رَسُولِهِ لَا بِالْهَوَى وَالنَّفْسِ وَالشَّيْطَانِ. That he said that the ibadatul rahmani, the worship of Ar-Rahman is ghayatu hubbihi. It's the most utmost of love with the most utmost of servitude. Ghayatu hubbihi ma'a dhulli abidihi. The most utmost of love with the most utmost of what? Servitude and subservience. And humbling yourself and breaking yourself down in front of Allah. If you do this to some human being or someone created, this is the type of shirk in which we're talking about here. The most utmost of love or the most utmost of servitude of worship is only for Allah. So now get back to what Ibn al-Qayyim says, and then I'll stop. It says, as far as in polytheism, talabul hawa'ij, to request that those necessities be taken care of from the dead, from those who are dead in the grave. And to seek istighatha by turning to them and asking them for relief during times of adversity and stress and being distressed and things that are what? taking place in your life that are trivial, that are weighing heavy down on you, and only Allah can remove it. However, instead of Allah, you turn to the dead, or you turn to someone alive thinking that they have the same ability that Allah Ta'ala can do to remove those trivial affairs from your life. Ibn al-Qayyim said that this is the origin of polytheism of the whole world. Goes back to this. He said, for verily the dead, and he gives a good refutation in this regard. He says, those who are dead in the graves, everything is cut off. There's not a dead person except that he's busy with his own affairs. He's busy with his own affairs in his own grave, because he has his own affairs to be dealing with, such as either he's being tortured, may Allah Ta'ala protect us, or he's being given some type of garden from the gardens of paradise. So he in his grave is busy. He's not even worried about what's going on in the dunya. Rather, he's being faced with something that's more trivial, and what's going to busy him more. He's busy. So the fact that you raising your hands and asking this person is not going to have any effect, because he himself is busy with his own haya al-barzakhiyah, with his own life, in which he's either being put to test by either being punished, or he's receiving a reward where his grave is a garden from the gardens of paradise. So that's why Ibn al-Qayyim says all his actions are cut off, where that person is dead cannot own anything for himself of any benefit or harm. He says, besides of the one who tries to seek istighatha, or ask him, or intercede, as they say, for him in front of Allah. And inshallah, I wanted to talk about the science of what they call, I wanted to break down what they call sifatun kashifa. And I wanted to bring some of the benefits of what the great Imam Muhammad bin Shinqiti, Sahib al-Adwa al-Bayan, mentioned. But we'll stop here, inshallah. تفضل. I'm sorry. I'll tell you one thing, when a person fasts, his mind is not as sharp. تفضل. Utmost love, utmost servitude. No, all those other worships go around that. They go around that. Oh. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. All the affairs of worship go around those two things. ولا قوة إلا بالله. الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمد الصيد الفضيل وباعث مقام أحمد ذيواته. All the affairs of worship circles around غاية الحمى غاية الظلم. For example, you fear Allah. Still, at the time when you fear Him, you still have to love Him, and you still are subservient to Him, even though you have fear. For a person, you can't have the affairs of worship unless you have both matters carried out. You can't worship Allah based upon love without servitude. You can't have servitude with Allah without love. For example, you can't claim that you love Allah, but you're not doing anything He commanded. But I love Allah. Why are you committing shirk? I love Allah. Why are you not praying? Why don't you do anything? I love Allah though. I say it verbally. Where's the servitude? Where's the subservience? You can't claim you love someone and then not showing your actions. You can't claim you love someone that doesn't show in your actions. The verbal statement is unacceptable. Is it clear? And likewise, you cannot have subservience without love. Because you can service someone and hate them all day. People do it all day. They go to their job, they do their job. I can't stand his gut. I can't take it. I can't stand him. But you still do it, right? Is it clear what I'm saying? So you can't have servitude without having love. So you can't have servitude of Allah and hate him. I'm just doing it. There has to be also likewise what? A love along with it. So one does not do without the other. One cannot be independent of the other. They both go hand in hand with regards to Allah. Then all the other aspects of worship go around those two pillars. Khashya, raghba, rahba, isti'ana, istighatha, everything. Salat, siyam, every worship. Because khashya and fear is actions of the what? It's actions of the heart. Salat, siyam, of course we know is aspects or worship of the body. But all those affairs of worship go around those two matters. All of them. Most utmost of love with the most utmost of what? Subservience, servitude. Is it clear? Last question. I'm going to bring my fans. I got only 5 minutes. Absolutely. You can't say you love Allah and not serve Him. You can't say you love Allah and you commit shirk. You're not praying. You're not doing anything. There has to be some servitude and subservience and servitude that what? That confirms your statement. As we know, the actions confirm the statement. We're supposed to say we love Allah when we profess it with our tongue, but we know the actions confirm it. The actions what? Confirm it. And that's known even amongst the human beings. We know that a person can say love you all day and they treat you like garbage. Eventually you're going to start having doubt in it or believe it at all. Right or wrong? You come in, you smack you upside your face, you ugly, spitting on me, but I love you though. What? We live in days and times people like that type of a treatment. They think that's love. But at any rate, that type of love for people who have sound mindset, or sound mind know that that's the type of love. You're saying it verbally, but your actions is not what? It's not showing it. And that's in regards to even ibadah with Allah. You can say you love Allah all day, but if your actions are not confirming it, then your verbal statement is rejected. Is it clear what I'm saying every now? Now we'll leave it off with this poetry. As the poet says, تعصي الإله وتظهر حبه هذا محال في القياس بديع لو كان حبك صادقا لأطعته إن المحب لمن يحب المطيع. The poet says in his poetry, he says, تعصي الإله وتظهر حبه هذا محال في القياس بديع. He says, you disobey Allah even though you claim you love Him. هذا محال في القياس بديع. Even an analogy that is something that is what? It doesn't make any sense. Can't say it. If your love was truthful, you obey Him. Verily the one, إِنَّمَا الْحِبُّ لِمَنْ يُحِبُّ مُطِيعُ. Verily the one who claims love for the one who he loves, he obeys him. Is it clear? طيب, stop here. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.